A young Marine sits alone in a military courtroom, surrounded by senior officers who watch her like she doesn't belong. The general presiding over her hearing leans forward with a smirk and asks a question meant to humiliate her in front of everyone. "What's your kill count?" The room goes silent, waiting for her to break. But when she finally answers, her response doesn't just shock the room, it stops it completely. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoy stories of quiet strength and hidden sacrifice, consider subscribing, because what happens next will rewrite everything you think you know about respect, authority, and the warriors no one is allowed to remember. The fluorescent lights hum overhead in a windowless room deep inside Naval Station Norfolk. The walls are navy gray, sterile and cold, designed to remind everyone who enters that this is a place of judgment. 3 cameras mounted in the corners record silently, red lights blinking in steady rhythm. At the center of the room sits a single metal table, and behind it, alone, sits Staff Sergeant Bryn Solis. Her uniform is spotless. Her posture is upright, but not rigid. Her hands rest flat on the surface of the table, fingers spread evenly. She doesn't fidget. She doesn't look around. Her face is calm, unreadable, like someone who has learned to disappear while remaining completely visible. Around her, arranged in a horseshoe formation, 23 senior officers fill the tiered seating, Navy admirals in crisp whites, Marine colonels with rows of ribbons spanning their chests, JAG lawyers flipping through thick folders marked with red classified stamps. Some lean back in their chairs with arms crossed. Others whisper to each other, low voices carrying across the room like static. A few glance at Bryn with expressions that range from boredom to thinly veiled contempt. The room feels less like a hearing and more like a trap. At the head of the room, elevated behind an imposing oak bench, sits Lieutenant General Merrick Caldwell. He is 58 years old, a Marine legend with 3 rows of ribbons and silver hair combed back in a style that hasn't changed in decades. His face is carved from granite, sharp angles and hard lines that seem incapable of softening. When he speaks, people listen. When he gives an order, people obey. He radiates authority like heat from a furnace, and right now, that authority is focused entirely on the woman sitting alone below him. The charges against Bryn are vague: conduct unbecoming, insubordination, failure to follow operational protocol. The words are bureaucratic and shapeless, designed to mean everything and nothing at once. The proceeding has been underway for 40 minutes, but Bryn has only been asked procedural questions: name, rank, unit. She answers each in a flat, neutral tone that gives nothing away. Staff Sergeant Bryn Solis, 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force, forward reconnaissance. Her voice is steady, controlled, like someone reading coordinates over a radio. Caldwell flips through her file without looking at her. The pages turn slowly, deliberately, each motion a performance for the room. He pauses on one page, his jaw tightening as he reads something that clearly irritates him. Then he closes the folder sharply, the sound echoing off the walls like a gavel strike. He doesn't look at her, just the paper, just the words on a page that tell him everything he thinks he needs to know. He leans forward, elbows on the bench, fingers steepled. His voice is calm, but edged with condescension. "Marine, your record is inconsistent. 3 commendations, 2 formal reprimands, multiple operational deployments, but almost no mission reports attached to your jacket. How do you explain that?" The question hangs in the air, heavy and accusatory. Bryn doesn't hesitate. "I don't, sir." Caldwell's eyes narrow. "You don't?" "No, sir." The room shifts. Officers exchange glances. Someone coughs. The atmosphere thickens. Caldwell stands now, slowly, letting the weight of his rank fill the space. He moves around the bench and down the steps, closing the distance between himself and the table where Bryn sits. "You were deployed to the South China Sea in 2023. Care to elaborate?" "No, sir." "Persian Gulf, 2024? "No, sir." He stops a few feet from her table, arms crossed, towering over her like a statue of judgment. "Do you think silence makes you mysterious, Marine? Or just difficult?" Bryn doesn't react. Her expression doesn't change. Her hands remain flat on the table. She doesn't blink. Caldwell begins to pace, his voice rising with each word. "You know what I think, Solis? I think you've been coasting, hiding behind classifications, using bureaucracy as a shield so no one can ask what you actually did during your deployments. He stops directly in front of her table, leaning down so his face is level with hers. I've seen Marines like you before, all mystique, no substance. You get one lucky assignment, ride it for years, and hope no one digs too deep. His words are daggers, sharp and intentional, designed to cut. Several officers nod in agreement. One writes something down on a legal pad. Another leans over and whispers to his neighbor, who smirks. Bryn's jaw tightens. It's subtle, barely visible, but it's there. A flicker of tension that betrays the calm exterior. Her knuckles press harder against the table. Her breathing slows. But she says nothing. Caldwell straightens, turning to address the panel now, his voice theatrical and confident. You want to sit there in silence? Fine. But this panel will make its recommendation based on what I see. And what I see is someone who doesn't belong in the Marine Corps. The words land like a verdict. The room feels smaller, hotter. Bryn's eyes remain fixed on a point just past Caldwell's shoulder, staring at nothing, seeing everything. In the back row, almost invisible among the sea of uniforms, sits a man who has been silent the entire hearing. Rear Admiral Idris Kale, early 50s, salt and pepper beard, eyes like steel. He hasn't spoken once, hasn't moved. But now, as Caldwell delivers his monologue, Kale shifts in his seat. He opens a thin folder in his lap, the kind reserved for information too sensitive to circulate widely. He reads something. His expression changes. It's subtle, but clear. His jaw tightens. His hand grips the armrest. He closes the folder slowly, deliberately, and sets it on his lap. His eyes lock onto Bryn. He doesn't look away. Caldwell calls for a recess. 15 minutes. The room empties in a wave of noise and movement. Officers gather in clusters outside, their voices filtering back through the open door. 3 years forward deployed, and not a single after-action report? That's not classification, that's cover-up. Caldwell's right. She's hiding something. Or maybe she just pissed off the wrong person. The whispers carry weight, each one another layer of judgment pressed down on Bryn's shoulders. Inside, she sits alone. A junior officer brings her a cup of water and sets it on the table. She doesn't drink it, doesn't even look at it. Her hands remain flat on the table, but now they're gripping the edge. Her knuckles are white. Admiral Call walks past her table slowly, his footsteps deliberate. He doesn't stop, doesn't speak. But as he passes, he glances down at her hands. He sees the tension, the strain. He pauses for half a second, just long enough for the moment to register, then keeps walking. The hearing resumes. Officers file back in, the noise settling into a low hum before falling silent. Caldwell returns to his bench, energized now, sensing blood in the water. He leans forward again, a predator closing in. Let's talk about your last deployment. You were attached to a Navy SEAL task unit as a liaison. Is that correct? Yes, sir. And during that deployment, you claim to have participated in direct action operations? I don't claim anything, sir. But you were involved in combat engagements? The room leans in. Every eye is on her now. Yes, sir. Caldwell's smirk widens. How many? Bryn hesitates. I don't have an exact number, sir. Ballpark? She doesn't answer. Caldwell turns to the panel, his voice dripping with mockery. Come on, Marine. You're a forward reconnaissance operator. Surely you kept count. Still nothing. He turns back to her, leaning both hands on her table now, his face inches from hers. This is the problem. We have a Marine who claims to be a combat veteran but can't or won't provide details. No mission reports, no verification, just silence. He straightens, letting the moment build. So, let me ask you directly, Staff Sergeant Salas, since you seem to think your record speaks for itself. He pauses. The room holds its breath. What's your kill count? The question lands like a detonation. The room goes completely silent. It's not a real question. It's a taunt, a trap designed to humiliate. If she answers, she's arrogant. If she doesn't, she's a fraud. Officers watch, some with pity, some with anticipation. Admiral Kale sits forward in his chair, his eyes locked on Bryn. She doesn't flinch, doesn't look away. She raises her head slowly, meeting Caldwell's eyes for the first time. Her voice is calm, precise, clinical. 73. If you've ever witnessed someone stand their ground when the entire world was against them, leave a comment below. And if you want to see how this moment changes everything, stay with us. The courtroom freezes. The word hangs in the air like smoke after a gunshot. 73. Officers stop moving, stop whispering, stop breathing. Caldwell blinks, his expression shifting from smug confidence to something closer to confusion. His mouth opens slightly, then closes. He wasn't expecting an answer. Certainly not that answer. What? His voice cracks, just slightly, enough to notice. Bryn doesn't repeat herself. She doesn't need to. Her voice remains calm, steady, like she's reciting grid coordinates. 73 confirmed kills, all from a single classified joint operation. The room shifts. Several officers sit up straighter. A colonel in the third row leans forward, his pen frozen mid-stroke over his notepad. A JAG lawyer stops flipping through her folder and stares at Bryn with wide eyes. Caldwell takes a step back, his hands falling from the table. His face is pale now, the color draining from his cheeks like water from a cracked glass. He opens his mouth again, but no words come out. Bryn fills the silence with 5 words that detonate the entire room. Codename Phantom Trident. The effect is immediate. Admiral Cale stands abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. His folder tumbles off his lap, papers scattering across the ground like shrapnel. His face has gone from calm to ashen in the span of a heartbeat. Stop the recording. His voice cuts through the room like a blade. Now. A junior officer scrambles toward the cameras, fumbling with switches. The red lights blink off one by one, plunging the room into a different kind of silence. This one is heavier, darker, the kind of silence that comes right before something breaks. Cale moves down the aisle between the rows of officers, his boots heavy on the floor. Clear the room. Everyone out except command-level personnel. Caldwell turns toward him, his face twisted with confusion and anger. "Admiral, I'm conducting a hearing here, and I have every right to." Cale interrupts him mid-sentence, his voice low and controlled, but shaking with barely contained fury. "General, sit down and shut your mouth." The room erupts. Officers exchange shocked glances. Whispers spread like wildfire. 2 JAG lawyers stand quickly, gathering their papers with trembling hands. A Marine captain hesitates near the door, unsure whether to leave or stay. Cale points at the exit. Out. Now. The door opens and closes multiple times as officers file out in stunned silence. Some glance back at Bryn as they leave, their expressions a mixture of confusion and dawning realization. Within 2 minutes, the room has emptied. Only 8 people remain. Caldwell, still standing near the front, looking smaller now without his audience. Cale, standing in the center aisle like a pillar of stone. Bryn, still seated at the table, hands flat, breathing slow and controlled. 5 other flag officers, all with enough rank to know that what's about to happen is beyond their clearance level, but too important to ignore. Cale walks to the center of the room. His voice drops to a tone that feels more dangerous than any shout. "Does anyone here, besides myself, have cosmic top-secret clearance?" Silence. Not a single hand moves. Not a single voice speaks. Cale nods slowly. Then, what I'm about to say stays in this room. Permanently. He turns toward Bryn, and for the first time since the hearing began, his expression softens. Just slightly. Just enough to suggest respect. Phantom Trident was a Black Book maritime strike operation conducted in international waters off the Spratly Islands in August 2023. He begins to pace, hands clasped behind his back, his voice steady, but weighted with gravity. It was unsanctioned by the Department of Defense, unacknowledged by the State Department, and classified at a level that doesn't officially exist. Caldwell opens his mouth to speak, but Cale silences him with a single raised hand. "You don't get to talk right now, General. You've done enough." The words land like a slap. Caldwell's face reddens, but he says nothing. Cale continues, his voice picking up momentum now, filling the room with a story that has never been told in public and never will be again. In the summer of 2023, naval intelligence intercepted communications indicating a coordinated attack on the USS Ronald Reagan carrier strike group. The threat was imminent. 36 hours, maximum. He stops pacing and turns to face the remaining officers. The enemy had positioned a command vessel, disguised as a fishing trawler, in international waters. From that vessel, they were coordinating submarine movements, missile guidance systems, and electronic warfare operations, targeting not one, but 3 carrier groups. A rear admiral seated near the back inhales sharply. Kyle doesn't acknowledge it. He keeps talking. We couldn't strike it officially. That would be an act of war. We couldn't wait for diplomacy. 4,000 sailors would have been dead within 2 days. He walks closer to Caldwell's bench, his boots echoing in the silent room. So, we sent ghosts. He turns toward Bryn, and now his voice carries something different, not just respect. Reverence. Staff Sergeant Salas was embedded with SEAL Team 6 as the primary breacher and close quarters specialist. She was chosen because she'd spent 18 months training with Israeli Special Forces in urban shipboarding tactics. No one else had her skill set. No one else could do what needed to be done. Caldwell stares at Bryn now, really seeing her for the first time. His expression is unreadable, somewhere between disbelief and horror. Cale doesn't stop. The insertion was conducted at night, in 12-foot swells, from a submarine. No air support, no backup, no extraction plan if it went sideways. He pauses, letting the weight of those words settle. They boarded that vessel at 0300 hours. The engagement lasted 72 minutes. Staff Sergeant Salas was the sole trigger operator moving through a hostile command center filled with enemy combatants. 73 confirmed kills, every single one of them necessary to neutralize the threat. By 0430, the command network was destroyed, the carrier groups were safe, and Phantom Trident was erased from existence. Cale picks up Bryn's file from Caldwell's bench, holding it up like evidence in a trial. Every operator involved was debriefed under threat of court-martial. Their service was redacted. Their medals were filed under false citations. Their mission reports were burned. He drops the file onto the table in front of Caldwell with a loud thud. Staff Sergeant Salas saved 4,000 American lives and prevented World War III. And she's been legally forbidden from talking about it ever since. Caldwell tries to speak. His voice is weak, defensive. I didn't know. Cale steps closer, towering over him now. You didn't know because you didn't care. You saw a young Marine who wouldn't bow, and you decided to break her. His voice hardens to steel. Her record is inconsistent because it's been sanitized. Her mission reports don't exist because they were burned. She doesn't talk about her service because she's been protecting this nation's secrets while you've been protecting your ego. The silence that follows is absolute. No one moves, no one breathes. Caldwell has nothing to say. His authority, his confidence, his entire presence has collapsed in on itself like a dying star. Cale turns away from him, facing Bryn now. Staff Sergeant Salas. She stands immediately, her movements crisp and precise. Yes, sir. You're dismissed. All charges dropped. You'll be reassigned to Strategic Command under my direct authority. Effective immediately. Yes, sir. She salutes, sharp and clean. Cale returns it with equal respect. Bryn turns toward the door, and then something extraordinary happens. Every officer in the room, except Caldwell, stands. Not because protocol demands it, not because rank requires it. They stand because respect commands it. The kind of respect that transcends paperwork and policy. The kind earned in blood and silence. Bryn walks toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the hollow space. As she reaches the door, Cale speaks again, his voice softer now. Solace. She stops, turns slightly. For what it's worth, thank you. She nods once, a single dip of her head that carries more weight than any speech. Then she opens the door and walks out. The door closes behind her with a soft click, and the room exhales collectively. Caldwell remains standing near the bench, staring at the empty chair where she sat. His hands are shaking, his face is pale. His lips move, but no sound comes out. Cale gathers his papers slowly, methodically, his movements deliberate. He doesn't look at Caldwell, doesn't speak to him. He simply walks past him, toward the door, pausing only to deliver one final statement. This hearing is over. The record will reflect that all charges were dismissed due to classified information that could not be disclosed in this forum. You will not speak of what was said here. You will not pursue this matter further, and if I ever hear that you've attempted to retaliate against Staff Sergeant Salas in any capacity, I will personally ensure your career ends in disgrace. Do I make myself clear?" Caldwell doesn't answer. He just nods, barely, like a puppet whose strings have been cut. Cale walks out, leaving Caldwell alone in the empty courtroom. The cameras are off. The officers are gone. The room feels larger now, colder, like a tomb. Caldwell sinks into his chair, his head in his hands. Outside, in the hallway, Bryn walks alone. Her footsteps echo against polished floors. She doesn't look back. Through the glass window of the courtroom, Caldwell is visible, still seated, still broken. The man who demanded her humiliation now sits in the ruins of his own authority. If you've ever seen someone's arrogance collapse in real time, share your story below. And if you want to see what happens to Bryn next, stay tuned. The corridor is long and empty. Bryn's boots echo against polished floors, each step deliberate and steady. The walls are lined with framed photographs of naval history, battles won, ships commissioned, admirals decorated. She doesn't look at them. Her eyes remain fixed forward, her posture upright, her breathing controlled. Behind her, through the glass window of the courtroom, Caldwell is still visible. He sits alone in the center of the room, hunched over, staring at the table where she sat moments ago. His hands are pressed against his temples. His shoulders shake slightly. The man who commanded the room with absolute authority now looks small, fragile, like something that was never meant to bear weight. Bryn pushes through the double doors at the end of the hallway and steps into the open air. The sunlight is harsh after the fluorescent coldness of the courtroom. She pauses for a moment, letting her eyes adjust, letting her body remember what it feels like to stand in the world without judgment pressing down on her from all sides. A breeze moves through the trees lining the perimeter of the base. The air smells like salt and cut grass. She inhales deeply, holds it, then exhales slowly. Her hands, which have been tense for hours, finally relax at her sides. A black sedan is parked at the curb. Admiral Kyle leans against it, arms crossed, watching her approach. He doesn't speak immediately, just nods once, a gesture of acknowledgement that carries no expectation. Bryn stops a few feet away. "Thank you, sir." Kyle shakes his head slightly. "You don't owe me thanks. You never should have been in that room in the first place." He opens the rear door of the sedan. "Get in. We have work to do." She climbs into the back seat without hesitation. Cale slides into the front passenger seat, and the driver pulls away from the curb smoothly, leaving Naval Station Norfolk behind. The drive is quiet. Bryn watches the landscape roll past through tinted windows, strip malls, gas stations, housing developments that all look identical. Normal life, untouched by the weight of classified missions and redacted service records. Kyle doesn't turn around, doesn't ask her questions. He simply lets the silence exist, understanding that some moments require space rather than conversation. After 20 minutes, the sedan turns onto a tree-lined street and pulls up to the front entrance of a building Bryn recognizes immediately. The Pentagon. Cale glances back at her. "Ready?" She nods. "Yes, sir." They walk through security together, past checkpoints and ID scanners, through hallways filled with personnel moving with purpose. Officers salute Kyle as he passes. He returns each one without breaking stride. Bryn follows a half step behind, her presence noted but not questioned. They take an elevator down 2 levels, the doors opening onto a hallway marked with restricted access signs. Cale swipes his card at a reinforced door, and it clicks open. Inside is a conference room, sleek and modern, with a long, polished table and screens mounted on the walls displaying classified data feeds. A dozen people are already seated around the table, senior officers, civilian intelligence analysts, a woman in a dark suit with a DoD lanyard. They look up as Kyle and Bryn enter. No one stands, no one salutes. This isn't that kind of room. Cale takes a seat at the head of the table and gestures to the chair beside him. Bryn sits, her movements controlled, her expression neutral. Cale leans forward, addressing the room. Everyone here has been briefed on Phantom Trident. Staff Sergeant Solace will be joining our Joint Task Force effective immediately. Her expertise in maritime threat assessment and close quarters operations makes her an invaluable asset to this team. A man in his 40s, balding, with sharp eyes, and a Navy commander's insignia, speaks up. "With respect, Admiral, her operational history is limited to field work, Strategic command requires a different skill set. Kale doesn't flinch. Her operational history includes successfully executing the most classified strike mission in modern naval warfare. If she can neutralize an enemy command network in 72 minutes under hostile conditions, I'm confident she can handle threat assessments from behind a desk. The room falls silent. The commander nods slowly, conceding the point without further argument. Kyle continues. Our current focus is on identifying and disrupting emerging threats to carrier strike groups operating in contested waters. We have intelligence suggesting coordinated efforts to replicate the tactics used in 2023. Staff Sergeant Solis's first-hand experience with those tactics makes her uniquely qualified to anticipate and counter them. He taps a screen embedded in the table, and a map appears on the wall display, showing maritime zones marked in red. Bryn studies the map, her eyes moving quickly across coordinates and threat markers. She doesn't speak yet, just listens, absorbs, processes. A woman with gray-streaked hair and a CIA badge leans forward. What's your assessment, Staff Sergeant? Bryn doesn't hesitate. The patterns are consistent with pre-operational reconnaissance. They're testing response times, mapping patrol routes, looking for gaps in coverage. If they're planning another strike, it'll happen within the next 6 weeks. The woman raises an eyebrow. That's a narrow window. How confident are you? Bryn meets her gaze evenly. Very confident. The tactics haven't changed, only the location. The woman nods, making a note on her tablet. Kale allows himself a small smile. Welcome to the team, Solis. The briefing continues for another hour. Bryn contributes where necessary, her insights sharp and precise, her delivery calm and professional. She doesn't over-explain, doesn't justify. She simply states facts and lets them stand on their own merit. By the time the meeting ends, the initial skepticism in the room has evaporated. Officers gather their materials and leave in small groups, several pausing to introduce themselves to Bryn, to shake her hand, to acknowledge her presence not as a curiosity, but as a colleague. She accepts each gesture with quiet grace. Her response is polite, but minimal. When the room finally empties, Kyle remains seated. Bryn stands near the door, waiting. Kale looks up at her, his expression thoughtful. You could have told him, you know. Shut Caldwell down in the first 5 minutes. Saved yourself the humiliation. Bryn shakes her head slightly. I was ordered not to discuss Phantom Trident under any circumstances. Kale leans back in his chair. Even to save yourself? She meets his eyes. Especially then. A long pause. Kale studies her face, searching for something. Pride, perhaps, or anger. He finds neither, just calm resolve. That kind of discipline is rare, he says quietly. Don't lose it. 1 week later, Bryn walks into the same Pentagon briefing room. This time, she's not a guest. She's part of the team. Inside, the dozen analysts and officers from the previous meeting are already seated. Maps are displayed on the screens. Intelligence reports are spread across the table. As Bryn enters, they stand. Not out of protocol, not out of obligation. They stand because they've seen her work. They've read her assessments. They've watched her decode threat patterns that others missed. They stand because she's earned it. Bryn takes her seat at the table, opens her laptop, and gets to work. The room settles into focused silence. Screens flicker with data. Keyboards click softly. Someone asks a question about submarine movements near the Malacca Strait. Bryn pulls up a satellite feed and walks them through the analysis, her voice steady and clear. Another analyst asks about electronic warfare signatures. Bryn cross-references signals intelligence and identifies a pattern that matches known hostile tactics. The conversation flows naturally now, her contributions seamlessly integrated into the team's rhythm. No one questions her expertise. No one doubts her place at the table. Admiral Kyle enters midway through the session, observing from the back of the room. He doesn't interrupt, just watches. Bryn glances up briefly, acknowledges him with a slight nod, then returns her attention to the screen in front of her. Kyle allows himself a rare smile. This is where she belongs, not in a courtroom defending herself against baseless accusations, not sitting in silence while someone tries to break her. Here, doing the work that saves lives, the work that most people will never know about, the work that defines her more than any medal or commendation ever could. As the briefing concludes, officers gather their materials and leave in small groups. Bryn remains seated, typing notes into her laptop. Kale approaches, standing beside her chair. "You settling in all right?" She looks up, her expression calm. "Yes, sir." "Good." He pauses, then adds, "For what it's worth, Caldwell resigned last week, submitted his retirement papers, and left without a statement." Bryn's expression doesn't change. She simply nods once, then returns her attention to her screen. Kale watches her for a moment longer, then turns and leaves. The door closes softly behind him. Bryn sits alone in the empty briefing room, the glow of her laptop illuminating her face. Her hands move across the keyboard with practiced precision. Outside, the Pentagon continues its endless rhythm of meetings and briefings and decisions that shape the world. Inside this room, one woman works quietly, her past redacted, her service invisible, her sacrifice known only to a handful of people who will never speak of it. The cameras in the corners blink red, recording nothing. The mission reports will remain classified, the truth will stay buried. But the work continues, and that, more than any recognition or apology, is enough. The people who protect us most are often the ones we never see. The missions that save lives are the ones that never make the news. And sometimes, the quietest voice in the room is the one that changed everything. If this story reminded you of someone whose sacrifice went unrecognized, honor them in the comments below. And if you believe that true strength doesn't need to be loud, consider subscribing, because the most powerful stories are the ones that stay with you long after they end.